Hi, this is Sanjay Bharti, and welcome to another episode of TFR Insights. Codefresh recently launched its Codefresh Runner program, a flexible solution that allows engineers to selectively run pipelines on their own Kubernetes clusters, including private clusters that are behind a company firewall. It sounds great because there is no management overhead. But what exactly is Codefresh? To discuss and to talk more about Codefresh Runner, today we have with us Dan Garfield, Chief Technology Evangelist at Codefresh. Dan, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So tell us, what exactly is Codefresh Runner?
So the Codefresh Runner is a runtime agent that's designed specifically for working with Kubernetes and scalable workloads. If you look at the other solutions on the market, if you have, for example, different components or agents that CI/CD tools use to run builds on your own infrastructure or pipelines on your own infrastructure, most of those solve a problem of universality, like running on Mac OS or running on ARM or those kinds of things. While the Codefresh Runner, there are ways to do those kinds of things. The focus of the Codefresh Runner is actually running on Kubernetes itself. So this allows you to run scalable pipelines and builds on your own infrastructure and in a very manageable way. If you look at Kubernetes, Kubernetes solves a scalability problem, but it typically doesn't solve a performance problem. Many people have noticed that if you're just using a VM, you may have better performance with a single workload than if you were using Kubernetes. And this is there are a lot of issues for why that is. Dealing with how storage is handled in Kubernetes, running things over the network, that kind of thing. So what the Codefresh Runner focuses on is providing not only the scalability, but we have a lot of tricks and mechanisms built in to handle caching and storage so that your pipelines, your workloads, they run very, very fast, and you still get the capabilities of both running on your own infrastructure and, of course, all the scalability that you would expect from a Kubernetes runner.
And as you said, performance, that is not a new problem in that space. But what kind of led Codefresh to come up with this solution? What problem you saw in the space, a pressing need that you're like, hey, we have to do something about it?
Yeah, great question. So we saw that a lot of our customers and a lot of people coming to Codefresh, one of the reasons they were coming to us was because there's a huge management overhead to running your own DevOps automation infrastructure. You have to maintain master nodes, you have to maintain versions, you have to maintain plugins, all of these things. People end up spending a lot of time maintaining these tools. And with Codefresh, architecturally, everything is container-based, and so updates are automatic, and you don't have to worry about that management component. But when it came to customers who needed to run infrastructure, they needed to run the builds on their own infrastructure for security reasons or whatever else. We do have a full on-prem version of Codefresh that you can install. But what we found is that, if you're managing the entire stack yourself, there's still some overhead to that. We can't really eliminate it entirely. So we created the Codefresh Runner, which is it takes less than 2 minutes to install, and then it takes full scalability. And essentially all of the requirements you have for running builds and pipelines on your own infrastructure, those are met. So lots of times we have customers who come to us and they want to go and install the full on-prem of the entire Codefresh stack. We say, hey, that's fine. Take 2 seconds to just install the runner and try it out and see how it goes. And usually within a few minutes, they realize that this actually meets all of their security needs, and it gets rid of all of the maintenance overhead that would have come along with that more traditional full on-prem setup.
And how can users, use it or get access to it, enable it? It is part of your SaaS offering. Can they download it? Talk about that.
Yeah, so if you just go create a Codefresh account, it's free to do, and you'll have access to install a runner on your own Kubernetes cluster, and you can do that for free and try it out and figure out how much you like it, and then even scale it out a little bit. And it's very easy. To install it, you install the Codefresh CLI on a machine that has access to your Kubernetes cluster, and then you just run Codefresh Runner init, and it will it'll install the Codefresh Runner on the Kubernetes cluster you're connected to and connect it back to Codefresh so you can manage it from the UI.
Is there any open source component to it?
Yeah, actually, the installer is open source, and some of the components of the runner are open source. That's actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because there is a big push within Codefresh to get a lot more involved in open source than we have been. We are core contributors to the Helm project, and so that was a project that we've been heavily involved with from the beginning. But we always felt a little bit limited in some ways in what we could do with open source, just given the time and resources that we were at. We recently raised a new round of funding, and we're feeling a lot more confident and capable about contributing back significantly to open source. So that's actually something that hopefully we're going to be announcing some great details about very soon. But yeah, the Codefresh Runner, to answer your question, does have some open source components, and the installer is open source. But there's definitely a lot more coming in terms of our contribution to open source. It's really, really important to us.
Right. I think it was 27 or 24 million. I mean, there's a big difference between 27 and 24, but what is the exact number, and where are you planning to invest that, investment into?
Yeah, we raised 27 million in this latest round. And we essentially have 4 core areas that we want to invest in and make sure that we do totally right. One of them is open source, and getting that functional, getting our contributions more significant, doing more there than we've done in the past is really important to us. And then the other areas that we want to invest in, and I should say that when it comes to our funding, that all of this is really focused on improving our customer experience. So the 4 areas we're focusing in are, of course, open source. And then number 2, expanding our continuous delivery offering. So we had some early initial success with some of the earliest advanced deployment, out of the box technology that any automation provider had. We were the first ones to have like a built-in canary step, built-in blue-green deployment step for Kubernetes. And we've had some really cool tooling for Helm. We're going to be expanding our continuous delivery tooling quite a bit. And that's actually very close. I think we're going to be able to announce something very, very soon on that. Number 3, we are doubling down on our best of breed approach versus vendor lock-in. So if you look at a lot of other platforms, they want to do everything. They have the kitchen sink is part of their platform. And what we do is we look at it and we say, look, we don't want to go and compete to be your Git provider. There are a lot of great Git providers out there. We're not going to reinvent the wheel when it comes to Git. We don't want to be your cloud provider, right? There are already a lot of really great cloud providers. So what we're going to do is we're going to integrate with every cloud. We're going to integrate with every Git provider. We're going to integrate with every logging provider, with every security provider. And so we want to be a sort of universal access hub for working with best of breed tools. So you're not necessarily part of some vendor lock-in, ecosystem where, well, I bought the CI component and I don't really like the source control, but I guess I'll just use that because I have to, because it's part of one platform. So we're going to be going very much in the opposite direction and focused on integration all day long. And then finally, the 4th area is enterprise security with the new Codefresh Runner. So that's already out and people can use it, and it meets those high bars of security that people have. So it's being used by financial institutions and places like that. And we think we can expand it even further to make it a more universally accepted solution.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about what work Codefresh is doing in the open source space. So please keep me posted whenever you're ready to talk about it. Now, going back to Runner, aren't there already solutions like Runner? What is so unique about it that developers or DevOps team should care about it?
Yeah, so there are lots of solutions for running workloads or pipelines on your own infrastructure. But where they make a trade-off is usually in universality. So they focus on having expansive support for systems and architectures. Codefresh, the Runner is focused on running on Kubernetes. So you can do that on AWS, you can do it on Google Cloud, you can do it on your own infrastructure. The universal component is Kubernetes. So we rely on Kubernetes to provide the universality, and instead we solve a scalability problem. In my experience, I was at a company where we started working on scaling our pipelines and builds, and we went from spending about $10,000 a month to spending about $250,000 a month once it was scaled up. But that came with this huge management overhead and, frankly, a ton of waste. One of the things we saw talked about at KubeCon Europe just last week was the idea that with Kubernetes, you can actually pack your workloads more tightly on machines, which means that not only do you save a lot of money, but you also save a lot of electricity, which is great for the environment and all those kinds of things. So with the Codefresh Runner, the focus is on performant scalability in a way that doesn't exist in the marketplace today. And you can try this yourself. If you install the code, go spin up a EKS on Amazon, throw a bunch of spot instances on it, which are, of course, those nodes that cost 1/10 as much as a regular node because they could be destroyed at any time. So they're kind of unreliable nodes. And install the Codefresh Runner on that, and then turn on auto scaling and throw 1,000 builds at it. And what you'll see is that nodes will be added as needed. They'll be provisioned smoothly. And then all of the performance components in Codefresh take care of the storage and the caching and all of those things in a secure way that normally in other tools you have to set those things up yourself. And when it comes to the performance, I'll tell you, at KubeCon last year, one of our customers gave a talk, and their builds went from 90 minutes to less than 14 minutes. I think it was like 12 minutes. So you think about the level of performance that now you have with that scalability, and you're talking about for companies, if you've got 500 engineers, you're talking about $5 or $6 million you're going to save a year just by saving 5 minutes off your build time. Let alone, we could probably do even more than that depending on what your build times are right now. So it's about making it performant, it's about making it scalable, and it's about taking away all of the management overhead that comes with this, because this stuff just happens automatically. It's self-healing, it's self-updating. You don't have to worry about it. You just install it, set it and forget it, as they would say in the infomercial world. You set it and forget it, and it's going to take care of itself.
It was, I think, almost a month now since it was released. What kind of adoption you have seen so far?
Well, so the Codefresh Runner is used heavily by our customers today. And while I wish I could give you the list of names, a lot of those customers are people who don't necessarily like their names being used. But I will say that a very large retailers are using it. We're seeing fintech companies adopting it. It's become pretty much our most popular offering with the enterprise class of customers, especially those that came in planning to install full on-prem. They'll go to do that, but they'll install the Codefresh Runner and they'll say, this actually meets all of our needs. This solves all the security problems we have with running tools in the cloud. This solves all of the scalability problems that we had with our old automation tooling. And what's there not to like? I get rid of my management headache, and this thing's just going to work.
Dan, thank you so much for taking your time out and talking about Codefresh Runner. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, we're just excited to be participating in the community, and would love to see people try the Codefresh Runner. Tell us what you think about it.